Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die, where my goal is to give you evidence that although our bodies will disappear, we survive physical death. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the international best-selling book called We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And today on our show, I'm honored to have Minister Matthew Smith. For over 30 years, Matthew has been working with the Spirit. He is a member of the Spiritualists National Union and teaches mediumship at the renowned Arthur Findlay College in Stansted, England, as well as at various organizations around the world. Matthew is author of the book Entrancement, a theoretical and practical manual, and 2 CDs, Embracing the Spirit and Spirit Communication. He gives demonstrations of survival publicly and privately. He tutors students all over the world on mediumship via Skype. In fact, I am one of his students. Matthew Smith also holds workshops on how we can develop our own mediumship. This coming August 2016, Matthew will be in the United States giving a 5-day workshop in Wisconsin for anyone interested in learning mediumship or anyone who wishes to deepen their skills. His website is matthewinspires.co.uk. So without further ado, Minister Matthew Smith, welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
Thank you. It's nice to speak to you and to your listeners.
Yes, we met just 1 month ago, and I am so happy to be one of your tutors and to have you on the show today.
Well, that month, where's it gone? It only seems like yesterday,
I know.
Doesn't it?
It does. It does. If you don't mind, Matthew, just maybe a little bit of your history. I know that I've read it, but just for our listeners, how does one have 30 years experience as a medium? I mean, did you grow up believing in this?
Well, I believe, and there are two trains of thoughts on this. I believe I come from the school that I believe mediums are born. I don't believe they're made. Everyone has an ability to communicate because we are spirit living a human experience. We're not a human living a spiritual experience, because everything that we do in life and we experience in life is there to help our spirit growth. So as a child, I would see the spirit, but as a child, I didn't know it was spirit. To me, it was, they were people. But because as a child, I was epileptic, I never used to see the spirit with my eyes open. I always saw them in my mind. And later in life, when I posed this question to the spirit world, or to those that work with me, I was told, well, we couldn't show ourselves to you in the objective form. Objective form means seeing spirit as I would see you or you would see me in that solid form, because if they did, could trigger fits. Seeing these spirits materialize and dematerialize. So they would show me in my mind. And those fits stopped when I was about 5. But I still proceeded to have this awareness. And the house that we lived in, there was a lot of spirit activity there. But I was never frightened of it. Others were, because they didn't understand it. Sure. And I found that, and I'm sure you have too, that if somebody is frightened of something, then they over-exaggerate it in their own mind.
Yes.
But when they understand it, that knowledge also brings a confidence. I've been called to many places where people say there are disturbances, etc. And, 9 times out of 10, it's not a disturbance at all. I had an occasion the other day where this lady rang me up and she said that her television, the volume on her television kept being increased. And she was convinced, in her words, she had a poltergeist in her home And it wasn't that at all. Her grandmother had just died, and she liked watching the telly. So she was just making them aware. She was turning the television off because she was deaf, this lady, when she was on the earth. And through the television, she was just letting them know she was okay.
That's funny.
But you see, because they didn't realise that, their mind automatically went to a spooky Hollywood movie.
Right.
Which, of course, isn't the case. Sorry, I went off subject a bit, didn't I? But that's the thing with this, you see. There were so many connections and interconnections with so many different aspects. And then I went to drama school. I mean, this ability never left me. I mean, I do hear people say, when they become teenagers, mediums, when they became teenagers, the ability subsided. Well, mine never did. It just stayed there, but I accepted it as something that was part of my life. I didn't think it was any different. And then from that, cut a long story short, from that, I then came to this college, the Arthur Findlay College, which actually, where I'm speaking to you from now. I learned mediumship here, as well as the church I belong to in Southampton, but primarily my training was done here. And then from that, it's just grown. Before I became a professional medium, I was a children's entertainer, and I was a professional clown.
Wow.
And I didn't realise that the clowning was also helping me with my development. Because when you're working, if you've got like 200 kids laughing, it's a tremendous energy,
Yes.
Tremendous. And I had who was given to me by many different mediums, a helper who was a clown as well, because like attracts like, doesn't it? And his name was Joey Grimaldi. And he still is Joey Grimaldi. And sometimes he still comes and works with me when I'm demonstrating my mediumship. You can feel his energy in the room because it's very light, it's very jovial, I mean, let's face it, what we're dealing with is death.
Oh, I know.
It's the most depressive. It's the most depressive thing going, isn't it?
Mm-hmm. Matthew, when you went to the Arthur Findlay College in the beginning, did you get a lot of your questions answered? And even you bring up Jerry Grimaldi. I hadn't a clue getting into this that we had guides and helpers and things like that.
Yeah. It was Joey Grimaldi.
Oh, Joey.
Yeah. When I came here, spiritualism was a lot different to what it is today, because you would ask a question, a response then would come from the tutors, but they never answered your question. And I've since learned, in my capacity as a teacher of spiritualism, there aren't any answers to a question really, because it's based on the perception of the moment. So we were encouraged to go and find out. We were encouraged to find out for ourselves, and how you develop your relationship through meditation, through practice sitting with the spirit world, and different aspects of information was given. And I soon realized that this Jerry Grimaldi was not a figment of my imagination, or anybody else's imagination to that matter. I did a children's party once, and I used to make balloon animals. And I was making a balloon animal, and the balloon was taken out of my hands. Literally. And the kids thought it was hilarious. I mean, I just sort of went along with it because I knew Joey was there. He was like part of the act, if the conditions were right for that to happen. And at the end of the show, whoever the little boy whose party it was, he said to me, my clown's name was Smithy because my surname is Smith. And kids can pronounce that name without any problem. And he said, Smithy, he said, you were very funny. He said, but the other clown with the ginger hair was funnier.
Oh, you give me goosebumps.
Yeah. So you see, he saw him. He saw him. I don't know if other kids did, but in his innocence, like when I was the child, I was seeing the spirit in my head. He wasn't. He saw the spirit in a solid form and just accepted it as that. Joey we used. He wasn't at every party because the conditions had to be right for it, you see. And then on my last week of that work, and it was a career, it was a very successful career. Mm-hmm. But I did make a promise to the spirit world that I'd work in that field for 15 years because I felt that was my life's plan to do that. And then I'd go full time with the mediumship, which I did. And on the last week, I was called to go to a hospital to visit a boy who had been involved in a traffic accident. And this boy was 8 years of age. And I didn't work with kids. I mean, boys of 8, you know, they didn't want a clown.
No.
They didn't want that at all. But I felt that I ought to do it. So I went to the hospital, obviously dressed as a clown. And in those days, we didn't have clown doctors like perhaps you do in America. You've probably had them there for a while. A clown doctor, as I should emphasise, is somebody dressed up as a clown, not a trained doctor being a clown.
Right.
I went to the ward, and the 8-year-old was in a private room, and there was a little 2-year-old who saw me walking up the corridor, and his little eyes were like saucers. He was petrified of seeing what was coming towards him. And I learned very early on, you don't talk to kids. You don't go to kids, they come to you. Mm-hmm. So I just did a clown wave and went in the room. And when I came out, this little boy was still there waiting for me. And I sat on the floor with him. I made him some balloon animals. And he was laughing and he was communicating in his own little way. And that was that. And I gave him one of my little clown cards, and the nurse in charge came up to me and she said, his name was Tommy. I can't remember his name, but she said, Tommy's been with us for 2 weeks. She said, he hasn't laughed, he hasn't communicated, he hasn't smiled, he's been very insular. But you come in, you haven't got any training in nursing or psychology. But he communicated to you. How'd you do it? And I said, well, I've no idea, because I just let it happen. Mm-hmm. And I left him the card, and a few days later, his mother rang me, and he died. This little boy died, and she said to me, "I just want to thank you for what you did for Tommy." She said, because as he was, she said, passing away. He said, with his eyes closed, "Where's Smithy?"
Oh.
So that story, or that experience, taught me that there was a power there with that clown that I never really knew. I just did it, you know? I just got on the treadmill and did it. And that was the last week of 15 years of working. And I didn't want to go for the 8-year-old because I didn't work with 8-year-olds. But you see, the spirit world wanted me there, not for the 8-year-old, but for the 2-year-old. And I always say to people, you know, if the spirit, if God puts opportunities in your path and you feel, oh, I don't want to do that, it's not about you. It's as an individual, it's about where the power's leading you. And it taught me a very good lesson, that to listen, always listen to the spirit.
Those are some very profound words. I've had it. Also, I never expected to write a book, talk about grief, do the things I have. And over and over, things just kept coming in my path. It was so obvious that I was meant to follow the path.
Yes.
And it wasn't what I wanted to do.
Well, there you go. But you see, I've never met a medium who wanted to be one.
Really?
Never. I've never met a medium that's said, oh, I'm going to be a medium now. It's been a series of events that's led them from A to B to C to D. The same as you with your book, because when you're writing, it's a form of communication. You're writing from a place of experience, and any writer will tell you that their greatest work comes from experience.
Yes,
they're putting into paper what they've actually breathed and lived and gone through. And that's what makes it real. That's what makes the words real on the page, because the person is writing from a place of truth. The nothing in life happens by chance. There's no such thing as coincidence. I don't think there is, you know. And now you see what was a horrible experience for you is being turned, if you like, into a rainbow for others.
That's true. Yes.
And then from those seeds, from that book, it's given people that you'll never meet, people that I'll never meet, but it doesn't matter. What matters is about being this instrument for the Spirit, and doing what you can when you can, because none of us know when we're going to be called home. And that's what I call the spirit world. The spirit world is home.
I like that.
This isn't home. This is a place that we just reside in for whatever period of time we have to reside. But, you know, that leads me on to talk about accidents and people that are killed in awful situations. Because I believe for all of us, there is a time to be born, as it says in the Bible, and I wouldn't say there's a time to be die. I say there's a time to be reborn. But we do have distorted minds. We do have people trying to cause disharmony in the physical world. And in situations like that, I do not believe that is an act of God. I believe that is an act of evil. And we have to fight darkness with light. And all we can do, what we need to do, is fight situations like that with prayer, not with swords, but with prayer. And good will always overcome evil. Evil being ignorance, you know, and control. And that's where spiritualism holds its own, because it's not a dogma, it is not a creed. It's saying to people, look, we've got 7 principles, or national spiritualism in England. American spiritualism has principles. I can't quote them to you, but ours are the fatherhood of God, the brotherhood of man, the communion of spirits and the ministry of angels, the continuous existence of the human soul, personal responsibility, compensation and retribution hereafter for all the good and evil deeds done on earth, and eternal progress open to every human soul. So that is the philosophy of a national spiritualist. And people are always surprised when you quote the first one, the fatherhood of God, and they say, what, you believe in God?
Right.
But, you know, have you found that?
Yes.
Yeah. They're really taken aback with that. And I say to them, yeah, of course, but Jesus was a medium. He was the greatest medium living. And he demonstrated the gifts of the Spirit. And that's what we do in spiritualism. And the difference, there are 2 differences between our religion and any other Christianity or Catholicism, for example, is that mediums work in our platforms and our churches, bringing information of survival and also a philosophy. And there are different people every week. Although we have ministers, as I am a minister of the Spiritualists National Union, we are not attached to a church. When we are ordained, we are told the world is our parish. That's a lot of parishioners.
That's fantastic.
So we're working wherever we're called, and that calling can vary.
You might have been the one who mentioned this from the platform. I can't remember, but someone had said with different religions, God is God. So it was comparing it to different lamps. There could be many different lamps as there are different religions, but the light is the same. Yeah,
no, it wasn't me, but that's a very nice analogy. I look upon it like a banquet. You know, you've got a banquet of food before you, and some people will gravitate to a particular food, other foods to that person, it won't appeal to them. And that's how I look upon religion. I'm not here to say, oh, no, that religion's wrong and spiritualism is right. It's not right for everybody. It will only be right for those that it feels right for. Mm-hmm. And the same, that if somebody's following another faith, then that's their path. But what we need is tolerance. We do need to find tolerance because God is God. God doesn't belong to any country or to any individual as a mascot. I don't know where that word just came from, actually.
It's a good one.
Yeah, I've never used that before.
You do have a sense of humor.
Yeah.
Smithy.
Yes. No, Smithy, 2 Fs.
Oh, 2 Fs?
Yeah,
Smithy.
2 Fs, yeah. Religion is, it's called dissent over history, isn't it, really? We need to look at harmony. If you've got harmony within self, then you'll have harmony in that. What was it? Who was it that wrote? If you've got harmony, I'm not doing the words justice, but if you've got harmony in self, you've got harmony in the home. If you've got harmony in the home, you've got it in the street. If you've got it in the street, you've got it in your neighborhood. And if you've got it in the neighborhood, then you've got it in your town. And it goes like that. Mm-hmm. You know, you're talking about harmony growing. And we are responsible, you know, as spirit, living a human experience, we are responsible for allowing the spirit within to spiritualize wherever we can. And if people do not want that, then that's okay. That's fine. Just don't own it, you know. People often say to me, well, why is it that not my family, but their family, they're not spiritualists and they think they are mentally deranged because they go into a spiritualist church? And I say to them, well, it's not a problem. Don't make it a problem. You know, we're not missionaries. We can't go around knocking on doors saying, whoopee doopie, one day you'll be dead. You know, it's spiritualism's about life.
Very much so.
Not about death. It's not about death. It's about today. It's not about yesterday. And once if people can get information to understand that their loved ones are okay, albeit they're just around the corner. There is a wonderful piece that Canon Scott Holland wrote, and it's called "Death is Nothing at All." If I seem to remember, it goes on the lines of, death is nothing at all. I am I, you are you. Whatever we were to each other, that we still are. So call me by my old familiar name. Speak to me in the easy way which you always used. Put no difference into your tone. Don't wear any forced air of solemnity or sorrow. Laugh as we always laughed at the little jokes we enjoyed together. Play, smile, think of me, pray for me. Let my name be ever the household word that it ever was. Let it be spoken without effect, without the ghost of a shadow upon it. I am here, somewhere very near, just around the corner. All is well.
That's beautiful.
I didn't say it to you exactly because that was from my head, but
that's pretty good. It's very good.
but your listeners can just Google it. Death is nothing at all, and I use it quite a lot when I conduct funerals.
Ah, very good. Something that spiritualists do that I noticed in a service at the end of the service, the medium, the minister will do medium readings on the audience. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because I was absolutely astonished, because that does make a service different than other religions.
Yeah.
Big time.
Yeah, sorry, I started to talk about
right.
that.
It's all
I went off,
perfect. I love
I went
everything
off,
you've said is perfect.
I went off subject. Part of our national spiritualism in England is not just a religion and a science and a philosophy. It is also a charity. And part of our charitable status is mediumship. So we have mediumship in our services, whereby the medium will sense through their clairaudience, clairsentience, they will sense a communicator. That means someone who's passed on, and they will receive information about this person. It might be it will be a description. It will be perhaps the name, where they lived, factual information, which you would have witnessed here at the college. And then the medium will find out where in the audience they are, and then the person will say, oh yes, that is right, yes, my mother did do that, that was my mother's name. And it's communion. It's that principle I spoke about, the communion of spirits and the ministry of angels. I mean, it's not just the human form, it's also animals as well. I mean, I remember once in the sanctuary, I was given a contact to a lady in the audience, and it was a fish. A fish from an aquarium. And yeah, I know it sounds bizarre. It sounds absolutely bizarre. But this fish told me, I mean, my God, if there was anybody here with a straitjacket now, they'd take me away. Told me that the woman had overfed it, and it had died floating on the top of the fish tank. But also within this contact, I don't know now if your listeners are going to be switch off. Also,
I don't think so, because this is fascinating and fun.
Also in the contact, I received, it wasn't her fish, it was her son's fish. And because it was like his prize fish out the aquarium, she thought, oh God, because he'd gone away for holiday or something. So she bought what she thought was a replica of the original.
Oh no.
And of course she flushed it down the toilet. I'm getting of course the whole sanctuary is in hysterics.
Of course.
Because how can a fish give this information? But you see, it's an intelligence. And this poor woman had felt so awful that she'd overfed it. And of course her son didn't know the difference, because when he came home, he thought it was the same fish. I mean, thank God he wasn't in the audience. But it helped her because she felt guilty about it. You see, this kind of stuff, I mean, that kind of scenario, you couldn't make it up if you tried.
No. And perfect for her, because guilt, whether it's a fish or an undelivered message to a loved one before they pass, guilt is horrible. And to be able to help someone like that, amazing.
Yeah. Well, she carried that with her. There's another one. Do you want me to tell you another one?
Yes, please.
Yeah. I did a private sitting years and years ago, and I've never forgotten it, in a church. And this elderly lady came in, and her friend communicated. She worked with this lady, and they were good. They were like sisters, and it was very good. She had very good evidence came through, and all of a sudden, this lady in the spirit world said to me, "Tell her that we worked together in the rubber factory." So I just said, "Oh, your friend's telling me that you worked together in the rubber factory." Well, the woman was hysterical. She was laughing, and I'm thinking, well, I don't really think that's very funny. Mm-hmm. But I just carried on, as you do. Anyway, afterwards, she told me in the wartime in England, a rubber was the name used for a condom.
Right.
And these women worked in what then was a rubber factory, but we would know it as a condom factory.
Very funny.
And of course, I didn't receive it as a condom factory because they didn't use that word then.
No.
They would have called them rubbers, you see. So you just have to trust what you're being told.
That's great.
And understand it's not about you as an individual. It's about what the spirit are bringing for that person who you're working for.
And laughter is so good, especially this is
a
heavy subject. And
you've got to know, if laughter comes in, you've got to be very, very careful you don't go over the top with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because what you don't want is to use any form of spirit communication as entertainment value, because that can be very offensive to the person who's receiving the message. Do you know what I mean by that?
I do.
Yeah. It can be very insensitive,
mm-hmm.
because we're not entertainers, we're mediums.
Right.
And unfortunately, I am seeing a lot of this creeping in now, where people are thinking it's all about them and not the communicator. And it never is. It's always about the communicator.
Well, that's a good thing to bring up, too, because even as I start my journey, my ego wants to say it's about me and I should be this, I should be doing that, or, the fear comes in, lack of confidence. Yeah. But it really is blessing what I get, right? And
yes,
I'm being used. This is not the Sandra Champlain show.
Well, you're using this vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
Your intention behind this is to educate and inform, and to reach people perhaps who maybe have fears about what spirit is, or they may have indoctrinations about what it is, or they may just be curious. So you're giving them a platform, where you say, well, look, go and find out about it, like Sandra did,
Oh, absolutely.
And that's the beauty of the media when it's used properly.
Mm-hmm.
I did TV shows in Denmark, and the shows are very popular. And one show, he was a Danish clown, and I didn't know him, and this clown communicated to his wife, who was in the audience. And of course, I just finished my clowning. Of course, I could do all the moves because that's what I'd done.
Right.
And he was utilizing that, and she knew it was her husband. And then he said, would I tell his wife that he worked at Circus Hoffman? And she said no. Very definite no. Now, when you've got a television camera in your face, and that happens, and then you've got an audience looking at you,
mm-hmm.
it wasn't live telly, but the energy in the room dips.
Sure.
Because she was very adamant he did not work for Circus Hoffman. Now, I didn't labour it. I said, well, that's what he's telling me. And that was that. She went home. She spoke to a friend of his, and she said, of course, Circus Hoffman, he never worked with Circus Hoffman. And a friend of his said, well, he did actually before you married.
Oh.
Now, that was excellent evidence
yes.
from the Spirit Was point of view, because it couldn't be said that I was reading her mind. There was no because we are accused of mediums as being telepathic, which I don't quite understand that theory, because I'm never looking at the person, the recipient, when I'm working anyway. I'm immersed in what the Spirit are telling me.
Mm-hmm.
And so much so, because he was a well-known clown in Denmark, she went on the TV, on this news channel, and she rang them up and told them about what had happened. Well, it was on their national news. I don't know what your equivalent of that would be in America. And of course, my picture was splattered about the national news. So every time I went back to do a show, I was well known.
That's great.
And I loved it for the sake that Spirit was being recognised.
Absolutely.
And the ratings went up too because of it.
Yeah, Matthew, I want to ask you. I'll have you finish your thought, and then I've got a good question.
Yeah, I'll finish. Yeah.
I know you are passionate about trance and trance healing, And would you mind just discussing what that is? Because I think many of us are used to going to a medium and getting evidential mediumship, but trance was something I didn't know anything about. And then I got an opportunity to experience trance healing with you, and I would just love it if you would share what that is.
There are two categories of mediumship. Well, there's three actually, but we'll just look at two. One is active, one is passive. The active mediumship is what we talk about when a medium's standing on a platform or giving the private sit-ins, evidence of survival. So we call it active because the medium's mind is actively involved in the process. Then we come into a category of mediumship we call passive. And that falls into the category of trance mediumship or public speaking in philosophy. This is where the medium's mind is not actively involved. The powers of the spirit are transmitting thoughts, if it's speaking, through the medium's mind, or if it's healing, they are transmitting power through the hands and sometimes through the body of the medium. So the healing medium is not actually a healing medium, is a channel. It's a channel for this power to work through, because the word healer suggests that we wave magic wands to make people better.
Yes.
And that's not the case. Doctors still have a very important role to play. If someone is on medication, they must still take their medication. Healing is something that is complementary. So this healing medium, I've got a story I could illustrate that perhaps with you. I was working in Canada only a few weeks ago, and before I left for Canada, the Spirit said to me, I've got a few crystals that students have given me over the last few months, and I'm not being ungrateful when I say this. I'm not into props. I never have been. I'm not into crystals, you know. Mm-hmm. There are many people that are, and they help them. That's fine. I'm not criticizing it. I'm just saying they're not for me. Anyway, they said, take these with me. So I did. I put them in the suitcase. Off I went. Whilst there, a lady said to me, could we give healing to a four-year-old boy who was epileptic? And said yes. And I never charged for healing for children, because that's my way of giving back, you know. Mm-hmm. And anyway, on the morning, I'd forgotten all about these crystals, and on the morning of the session, the Spirit said, take one of those crystals with you and tell Bo, that's little boy's name, tell him it's a rock from the moon. So I did. Got to the church, and he comes in with his mum. He's dressed, Sandra, I swear to you on my life, he's dressed in an astronaut suit. Wow. Anyway, he sat down. I talked to him. The clown came out really for a little while to play, you know, and got him accustomed to me. And I said, now, Bo, before Matthew came here, I said, I met a man who was an astronaut. I had my fingers crossed when I said that, because my mother always taught me, if you keep your fingers crossed, it's not really a lie. Anyway, his eyes were like saucers, you know. His mother starts to cry, and I looked to the mother. I thought, have I done something wrong? And she told me the day I left England, she'd read him a book about a man in the moon. And he said to his mother, every day since, Mummy, can I have a rock from the moon? Now, look at the intelligence of the Spirit there. Mm-hmm. Wow. And so we gave him his healing. And to my knowledge, that was on May the 12th. We're now, I don't know what date it is today.
June 16th.
Okay. So now we're June 16th. To my knowledge, he's not had a fit since. And he was having, she told me, he was having up to 12 seizures a day. Wow. Now, for a little 4-year-old, that's a lot. That is a lot. And then she gave me feedback and said that night he didn't want to let go of his his rock from the moon, and they had to take it off him and they put it on a shelf very high up in his bedroom. No way you could get at it. And in the morning, it was in his little pajama pocket. And she said, Bo, what's that doing there? He said, the angels put it there, Mummy, because they said I've got to have it close to my heart.
Oh.
Now, a kid could not make that up.
No.
That's very humbling, you see, when you get that. So what Matthew's doing, Matthew's just placing his hands, in this particular case, over his head. Obviously, his mummy has to be there because he's a minor. And he was as good as gold. I've got my eyes closed. I'm not thinking of anything. It's very hard to put into words, actually. It's like a deep meditation. Mm-hmm. And this energy, whether it's heat, whether it's cold, it varies. It's certainly not body heat, that's for sure. And then the proof of the pudding is the fact that, he's not had a fit since. But you see, I was epileptic when I was little, and I'm sure the spirit world placed me in that situation because I would have tremendous empathy with him. And there was also a healing going on. There must have been a healing going on within myself from the fact when I was a child and having fits.
That's fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And just a quick question. Not everyone can be healed. I mean, obviously, there comes a day when we all cross over.
Well, you see, it depends what we mean by the word healed.
Oh, okay.
Because some in the vernacular, it means getting physically,
yes,
mentally or emotionally stronger. I've had many cases, particularly where cancer patients are concerned. The power hasn't cured the cancer, but it's got rid of the pain.
I see.
And it's given people a peaceful transition.
That is miraculous in and of itself.
Yeah. So it in that particular scenario, it's helped them on a soul level. Mm-hmm. Because you see, when the spirit told me that when we've had to take a lot of tablets and drugs to sustain life, fierce drugs, it has an impact on the spirit. Because what goes in will reflect into the spirit's life force. And this is why in the spirit world, there are halls of healing. So the individual, if they've passed in that particular way, are taken to halls of healing where a balance is restored within the spiritual energy. Now, whilst those drugs had to be there because they're necessary for pain relief or longer expectancy, whatever, it does have an effect on the spirit self. And it just makes you wonder really whether we are whether we are kinder to our animals than we are to our fellow human.
I know. Yes. That just makes me think of a question about suicide. Would someone who has ended their own life go through that hall of healing as well?
Let me ask you, because I don't know. Let me ask you. Let me ask the spirit to try and give us some insight on this, because it's not a question I've been posed before. Okay, what I'm just being made aware of, when everyone comes, these are not my words, okay? These are words that are coming into my head. When everybody comes into our world, all are greeted with the same love, compassion, and understanding. Those who have been catapulted into our world, albeit through terror or through their own hand, are given more love, more help, more understanding because they have a need. That's what I got.
That's great. And it just came to mind, I had one of my readers of my book write me who has just suffered an incredible amount of loss in her life. Almost everybody. And her husband is very sick. And, she's actually thinking about ending her own life. And she says, I'm working with a doctor and a psychologist, and, you don't have to call someone on my behalf, but she just wanted to know my thoughts. And, so that just came up to my mind.
Well, the lady has had an awful lot on her plate. And to suffer one bereavement is difficult enough, but to have several in close proximity to each other, you're not having chance to grieve once before you're having to grieve again. And within the stages of grief, there are various stages of grief, and guilt is one of them. And with some people, guilt comes out first, depending on the circumstances. And this lady obviously is going to be thinking to herself, what have I done wrong?
Yes.
What have I done wrong to experience all this? And nobody can give her the answer to that. All one can do is try and help her find those happy memories that she shared with these people, and whether it was in the destiny for this to happen, we don't know. And it's very easy to try and put a spin on things, but we have to be truthful and say, well, there are some things that we don't really know. But look around you and look at the network of angels in disguise.
Yes.
That are there. Now, touching on a horrendous thing that happened in America to 9/11, when your country endured that terrible, terrible atrocity. Somebody said to me, well, where was God when that happened, to allow that happen? And I said, God was in the firemen, the ambulance men. God was in the people on the street that were helping each other. God was everywhere. We can't blame God for man's inhumanity to man, or indeed when we're going through difficulties. Look at that piece about walking on the beach. Do you know the piece?
Well, saving the one starfish?
No, it's another one. It's about a man had a dream. He was walking along the beach, one set of footprints.
That's right.
And then there were two sets of footprints in the sand. And then when the man said, but God, why was it you deserted me when I was in the most difficult times of my life? And God said, yes, but it was then I carried you.
Yes.
And if this lady can try and look at it like that she is actually being carried, and the love of those she has is still there to help her. But if she did take her own life, it doesn't necessarily mean her life then has been fulfilled.
Right.
And whether she will meet them again or not straight away, we just don't know.
Mm-hmm.
I would recommend her to get a book called Testimony of Light.
Okay.
Helen Greaves. It's very good. And that will help her. That will help her tremendously.
Okay, I will send that to her.
Yeah.
And I spoke about many of the things in my email immediately after she said that.
Yeah.
And everything I knew about life after death that I've learned, everything about grief that I've learned, and also there's some people that have suffered some incredible tragedies and who are now making a difference with other people.
Yes.
Matthew, I'm looking at the clock and time is going by fast. So if we could, you are at one of the greatest places on earth, I feel, the Arthur Findlay College.
Yes.
And I had actually spoken to a couple mediums very early on this radio show. And they said they went there, and that's what started them. And I thought, I have to go. So my friend Darla and I met you just 1 month ago. So you are a tutor there.
Yeah.
And if you could just talk a little bit about you being a tutor, perhaps, I'm just, again, looking at the clock, not necessarily at the Arthur Findlay College, but you work with people privately. There's an upcoming event here in the United States, if you wouldn't mind mentioning that, and then maybe just giving us a few closing words, and we'll end the show.
Okay, so the Arthur Findlay College was bequeathed by a man called Arthur Findlay to the Spiritualists National Union because he investigated mediumship, and he found without any shadow of a doubt it did exist. And he wanted his home, which is a small mansion in the Essex countryside, not far from Stansted Airport or Heathrow Airport, to teach people how spirit functions and their own sensitivity. And the training program for teachers here is very strict, and so it should be. But not everybody who comes here, of course, comes here because they're going to be teachers. People come here just to learn about mediumship, and they do from all over the world. And interestingly, of course, when Arthur Findlay left his home to the Spiritualists National Union in the early 60s, there was not two international airports at its doorstep. Heathrow wasn't as big as it is, and Stansted Airport wasn't like it is now. So the spirit world, I believe, knew. And they were instrumental in bringing this about. And there's nowhere like it. I mean, I know some people call it Hogwarts because of its what it looks like from the outside.
Right.
But it's very intensive, the training. People come from all over the world, all different walks of life, and they've got that one thing in common: their spiritual desire to learn. So there is a program online. People can go online, arthurfindlaycollege.org, and they can see the different things that go on here. So basically, wherever I go overseas or in the UK, I'm teaching at the same level because it is a high standard of level teaching here. It has to be because this is like the University of Spiritualism, if you like, to show people workshops, lectures, tutorials. The very hands-on in the teaching because the teaching has to be experiential. A tutor can stand up and say, oh, this happened to me, that happened to me, but it didn't happen to that individual. So really it's a story, but when it's happened to you, it's going to be more empowering.
Yes.
And then, sorry, there was a second side to your question, wasn't there?
Oh, just you're coming to the States pretty soon.
Oh, yes, I'm going to go to I can never say it.
Wisconsin.
Yes. I'm doing a 5-day. I'm helping actually a student of mine who is opening a school there. So I'm just coming over to help her. It's a 5-day course called The Confident Medium, and it's dealing with confidence issues. Because I've found that over the years, all spiritual mediums lack confidence. And this is helping building confidence into their mediumship.
Perfect.
And it's no more. I think it's limited to about 25 people, so it's not huge. And confidence and trust, you see, are two different things. The Spirit told me recently, if mediums will trust what we give them, they will then be more confident in their delivery.
Ah, very good. Good for me to hear too.
So the more you trust the spirit world, the more confident you are in the delivery. And a word or a thought for people to leave with today.
Yes.
I'm mindful of a pearl of wisdom that the spirit people gave me. A pearl of wisdom is like a one-line of philosophy, and I was been mindful of it last few minutes, and it's this: in life, don't chase rainbows, make them.
Beautiful.
So you see, it's there. It's there for us all.
Mm-hmm. We're very powerful. Very.
Yeah.
Oh, thank you very much. I'll end this episode, and I'll tell my listeners, or our listeners, if you go to WeDon'tDieRadio.com and look on episode number 100, I have this episode with Minister Matthew Smith, and I'll have all the details on his website and where he'll be in August and everything I know about him. And in closing, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. Again, all of our episodes are on WeDon'tDieRadio.com. Matthew's website is matthewinspires.co.uk. And in closing, my name is Sandra Champlain, and I have been your host on We Don't Die Radio. And with all of my heart, I do believe that life is an education for the soul, and that your life here on earth is important. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you soon.